Good morning everyone. So welcome to the UPSC 2021 Anthropology Mains Examination Analysis at Forum. In today's class, we are going to discuss in brief as to what type of questions were asked in this year's exam, how were they different, and in what significant sense we have found certain divergences from our standard syllabus. Okay. The chart over here is showing as to how the proportion of questions being asked have been ranging ever since 2005 till 2021. The trend is an average marking as to how many questions were asked pertaining to a particular topic. Though I hope you underscore the fact that there is nothing black and white when it comes to writing mains answers, because sometimes you will invariably find convergence of two topics which you are asked about simultaneously in one particular question itself. Okay. So this is giving you a brief analysis as to the number of questions asked. What we are going to do today is to try to understand the pattern in which the questions were modeled upon. Were there any repetitions from previous year's examinations? And if there were repetitions, in what sense? Okay. Sometimes we may find applied concepts which are asked pertaining to a particular concept which was asked in previous years in a conceptual way. Okay. So you will get some beautiful insights from the discussion, and we will try to analyze that how should we map our preparation when it comes to anthropology mains optional. Yes. So throughout the discussion, I hope you will also keep in mind the fact that it's more about also choosing the questions which you are going to answer in the exam, because most of the questions which you are going to see, which are having a sense of option where you can choose, there you will see a contagious mix of variety of questions. Okay. So you cannot rule out a particular part of syllabus thinking that it will not be asked. Yes. So we have to be better prepared, we have to have all tools and ammunitions in place, because we should be open, we should go with the open mind, and we should be able to answer and cater to the demand of the question, right. So if we start our discussion of paper 1, you will see the first question, which is a compulsory question, you all know. The first part was asking us about animism and deep ecology. So animism is a form of religion which we all have studied as a part of our paper 1 syllabus. But see, here they have inched one step forward and they are asking us the interrelationship animism shares with deep ecology. Obviously, we are not going to get any good marks if we just write about animism in this particular answer. So we have to draw out a comparative analysis between deep ecology and animism, right. As we all know, what do animists believe? They believe in the concept of soul, right. So on the other hand, what is deep ecology? For those of you who had known what deep ecology is, that question would have been an easy cakewalk. But for most of us who don't know as to from where this term has been picked up and what is the subject matter which is covered under deep ecology, so I would like to bring out a few associated terms with deep ecology which might appear in the exam again as well. Otherwise, you can use them as a vocabulary to write your mains answers and enhance them. Okay, it's not just about anthropology optional. Deep ecology in itself is an environmental term, so you can use it in your GS exam as well. Okay, we'll talk that about later, that how can we use it. Try to first understand as to what is deep ecology trying to maintain. What is the standpoint of deep ecology? Deep ecology as a concept believes in the fact that every environmental aspect, every part of nature, everything is important, irrespective of the degree of use it is to human beings. What do I mean by this fact? So in this era of climate change, when we are seeing negotiations failing at every step, we already know the degree of havoc which has been caused to planet Earth. And if you try to bring out the primary reasons as to why we are seeing this much sense of climate change and why human beings are cursed for causing irreparable damage to planet Earth, you will see the entire reason of the thought process boils down to one approach, which is called as Anthropocentric Approach. You also know about Anthropocene epoch. You have studied about it in your part of your syllabus, right? So from there itself the term Anthropocentric Approach has been derived, which says that human beings are selfish creatures and they always think about using environmental aspects to fulfill human beings' needs. If I use simpler terms, we humans are using nature as a means to achieve our ends. So that is the humankind definition of anthropology as to how human beings consider environmentalism. Whereas deep ecology is the exact opposite. Deep ecology is centered around the fact that we should value nature, environment, irrespective of the degree of usage they are to humans. Okay, so deep ecology is entirely ignoring the fact that we can chalk out some beneficial measures which environmental aspects and nature together are providing to human beings. Okay, so it is like ecocentrism. Another term which has a similar meaning, okay, ecocentrism, as you can break down the terms and you can easily understand, it keeps ecology at the center. Whereas when we were discussing the term anthropocentrism, we were keeping humankind at the center. Okay, these associated concepts, they belong to a topic called environmental ethics, right? Because you already know we have come to such a standpoint where a reckless usage of natural resources is actually bringing alarming changes across the world. Increasing forest fires, the pattern of droughts and floods have changed consecutively, and erratic rainfall is also one of the main consequences of the long-term climate change effects which are visible, right? So keeping in mind all these facts, this question has been asked to us. Okay, so this is the thought process behind this particular question, and why it has been asked in interrelation with animism, the concept being so because you must have heard, no, tribal people, ones who live in the forest, they worship nature, concept of sacred groves, conservation, everything is interlinked. So in those areas of the world where the tribes are worshipping nature in the form of a god, they obviously do not allow any kind of harm to happen to the natural surrounding around them. Okay, so that is why these two concepts have been asked in an interconnected manner. Okay, as I told you, it has a broader application in terms like environmental ethics, anthropocentrism, you already know. You can also use biocentrism or ecocentrism consecutively, because both of them are centered around the concept of soul. Okay, so rather than focusing entirely on fulfilling human beings' needs, it's high time we become sensitive to environment, and we also think about environmental well-being, because if the environment is not well, we cannot be well in any sense. A very recent example you can see around you. Before this COVID phase 3 lockdown, you had 10 days lockdown specifically because of rising pollution levels in Delhi. Okay, So you can think about the long-term ramifications the environmental pollution can cause to ourselves, and we are the causative agents who actually began all of this. Okay, so this was the context in which this question was asked. There's another associated concept with deep ecology. It is called as Eco-Feminism. So Eco-Feminism as a thought process is centered around the belief that it is mankind or male counterparts in society who are entirely focused towards achieving certain ends using environment as a means. As you can see, it is a sub-discipline of feminism as a movement. So feminism highlights that how women over the time period, over centuries and centuries together, have been subjugated, suppressed, and have not been subjected to equal rights, right? So you can interrelate the concepts. As to what ground does feminism believe in, you can try to interrelate the aspect and try to decipher what would ecofeminism mean. Okay, so ecofeminism is trying to highlight the fact that it was the male population who were responsible for wrongly using environment, for using it dubiously to achieve their own selfish ends. These all are associated terms. They can appear again in our exams, or you can use them as a part of your mains examination general vocabulary. Okay, so we already know usage of informed terminology which is up to date, it can give us marks, right? So this was one peculiar question which was a bit off guard for some students. If you look at the rest of the questions, you will see they have followed the pattern of older papers themselves. Marriage regulations and alliance theory, people can easily attempt if they have studied the topic marriage under paper 1. Historical particularism and Franz Boas. Historical particularism as a school of thought under short notes, it has appeared 2 or 3 times by now in mains examination. And when we specifically study the chapter on anthropological theories, we generally emphasize over this fact that this is not something which we can overlook. Yes, because there are schools of thought which potentially have the capability of appearing as a short note question or as a long answer as well, right? So this year we have seen bioculturalism as a school of thought, that also has been asked. Historical particularism has been asked, right? Biocultural approach and Geert's contribution, here this has been asked. So 2 questions consecutively they have been asked from anthropological theories chapter. And mind you, this is a compulsory question. So here we did not have the option to leave or skip a question if we do not know the answer, right? The next one was thermoluminescence dating. Again, one of the most interesting parts of the syllabus, which contains the absolute and relative dating methods. We have always had ample material on both the topics, and we study it as a part of our paper 1 syllabus as well, right? So I hope there was no more difficulty for people in approaching these questions, because they were directly conceptual, concept related, except for deep ecology, which would have been a new concept for most of us, right? If we look at the second question, A part, describe the physical and cultural characters of Homo erectus along with its phylogenetic status. We have always been repeatedly observing that there is an essential, this type of a question invariably in every year's examination. So in 1 year it can be Australopithecus, one time it was Homo habilis in the form of a short note question, and this year we had Homo erectus. This is one of the most predictable questions, and I always ask students to focus on the phylogenetic status category whenever they are preparing any type of a species based answer. Because see, in the evolutionary hierarchy, when you are proceeding from apes towards Australopithecines, and then towards the genus Homo, where you talk about Homo habilis, Homo ergaster, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalensis, and finally Homo sapiens. For each of these subtopics, we should have a phylogenetic chart ready. You all know what is a phylogenetic chart? The place that the particular species in discussion holds on the evolutionary map. So you can easily draw a gradual progression using slanting lines. You must have seen in most of your reference books also. You can easily show the position with which the asked species is holding on the evolutionary hierarchy. This is what we just did. We discussed how Homo sapiens have gradually evolved, beginning right from Australopithecines till Homo sapiens, right? So depending upon what question is asked, please do not skip drawing the phylogenetic chart in such questions and the brief physical characteristics if you can. You need not have to draw a 2-scale diagram when it comes to the explanations pertaining to skull. Okay, you can draw a very rough diagram, but make sure that you label it properly in terms of supraorbital ridges, sagittal crest, right, the dental pattern. So these are some things which we do not have to miss. So even if we draw a rough diagram, we should make sure we label it properly. Okay, I have kept on telling this to students for multiple times by now that UPSC is looking for a general understanding of a particular topic. It is not looking out for expert people who can draw 2-scale maps and diagrams. Okay, so in such type of questions. So these are very expected questions which we generally keep on writing in our test series as well, right? So this was on those lines. And Homo erectus, if you can see, has repeated periodically every 4 years. So it has a pattern. So again see 2011, 10, 14 and 21, a fair degree of repetition. Again, this particular question from your anthropological theory part was asking about the contribution of Clifford Geertz and his concept of thick description. So here it would not suffice if we just explain the concept of symbolic and interpretative theories, because we are being specifically asked about what do we understand by the term thick description and how was it used by Geertz. Okay, so your focus should have been that particular topic, right? One more peculiar aspect which we observed in this year's examination was that while we were asked about questions from prehistoric archaeology, this year the focus was a bit more about worldwide aspects. Okay, if you see this particular question, here we are being asked about farming cultures of the Neolithic period in Near East. One more question you will see as we progress through the discussion, that was asking us about the European culture. So generally we have a trend analysis and we try to decipher that we will be asked about questions ranging from prehistoric period, specifically from the Indian areas. That is what we expect. But this year we have found 2 questions, and that too they are focusing on other major parts of the world. So this is to bring to your attention that the same question pertaining to the farming cultures and specifically in Neolithic period, it was asked in 2016 as well, but the subject matter of the question was focusing on Indian subcontinent, okay, specifically on India, and here they are asking you about East. Okay, so we have to make sure that we add certain concepts to our notes pertaining not only specifically to India, because that is what you study in each of the every classes and you have notes as well for that, but we have to make sure that we have a general understanding with reference to the names of the sites pertaining to a particular prehistoric period which are scattered across the parts of the world, And apart from that, we should also know the most common or dominant features of Neolithic period, right? So that you can write an answer when you are asked about that. Apart from that, it would be a value addition to your answer if you can remember the archaeological findings also, okay, pertaining to a particular period of a particular country, right? So this is one major variation which we are witnessing over here, that the focus on prehistoric cultures have diversified, and we are often now more asked about the world as well. Okay, so this is one takeaway which we can note, and we can otherwise also we should make sure that we have at least names of 5 sites belonging to major areas of the world when we talk about such prehistoric periods, right? Question number 3, part A, was asking you the political organization of simple societies and how do they establish power, authority and legitimacy, which is again a direct topic from your syllabus. You have a chapter called Political Organization and Social Control, okay, where you have elaborately talked about how to differentiate between power, authority, legitimacy. You can start with defining them. You can start by the most primitive tribal societies and interconnect as to what type of political organization and social control do they follow, right? B part, the genetic mechanisms of micro and macro evolution, again from your static part. And see, this C part was what I was highlighting to you. Just as we had a question on Neolithic period which was asking us about the Far East, here you can see it is asking us about different traditions of European Mesolithic, okay. So it would not suffice in this question if we just delineate the characteristic features of the Mesolithic time period. We had to move one step forward. We should have a detailed understanding of the entire European continent, and we have to do a trend-setting pattern as to what type of evidences have been unearthed from which part of the continent or specifically in which country, and what have been found over there. Because you already know, depending upon the type of tools which are deciphered from a particular place, they are categorized into certain industries. The most basic example you can draw a parallel from over here is the Paleolithic era. So where we draw the stone tool industries into Acheulean culture, okay. So all those traditions and cultures which you have studied in Paleolithic era. Similarly, they are here asking us about cultures in Mesolithic era, but in Europe. So these two questions which were from prehistoric archaeology, but they were focusing entirely on places outside India, okay. So that is why I was telling you when we began the discussion that the art of writing or attempting this particular examination was not just knowing at the outset how to present your answers along with all the facts, but it was also more dependent on which ratio of questions were you choosing to attempt, okay. So you had to be thorough in at least all the parts of the questions being asked to fruitfully answer the question in a holistic manner, right. Look at question 4a. It is combining the first two chapters, asking us about the scope of anthropology and uniqueness in the field of other social sciences. You have ready-made answers and notes which tell you to elaborately compare anthropology with humanities, okay, with life sciences, with genetics, medical sciences, biology. This question is asking you how anthropology is different, okay, with respect to the rest of the social sciences, the second part of the question. The first part is focused on the scope of anthropology or relevance. What is the advantage of studying this particular subject? You can elaborate an all-round perspective when you are writing about the scope over here, beginning right from the fossil evidences, the techniques like anthropometry, craniometry, forensic anthropology, dermatoglyphics, all the applied anthropological disciplines which tell us about the fossil hominids belonging to relevant periods, and even decipher that what type of characteristics did they behold. Apart from that, you very well know that using anthropology, we can contribute in a great way to the tribal study of the Indian scenario. Specifically, you can highlight examples also like Verrier Elwin and what contribution was made by him when he advised Jawaharlal Nehru about the tribal Panchsheel policy, which was eventually accepted and floated as a part of the national policy document. So you can highlight various fields and various conceptual evidences where anthropology has its stronghold. Okay, so this was a pretty subjective question. Everybody might have written it in their own way, depending upon what sort of relevances were they able to highlight. In the second part, you had to decipher that what differences do we study as a part of being anthropology student with respect to other social sciences. Okay, so this is a very common topic which we study as a part of your basic chapter 1 and chapter 2. You must be able to write it in a detailed way. Next one was asking you about major branches of linguistic anthropology and language use in social and cultural settings. Now see, the second part of the question has been directly lifted from the syllabus from a topic called social and cultural context of language use. The first part, however, is asking us to elaborate more on the branches of linguistic anthropology. Okay, paralinguistics, sublinguistics, phonemes, what are the relevances, and how language has been studied with respect to what mode of detailed patterns. Okay, so this part of question might be tricky if we try to attempt the first part, but the second part was more of a relevant topic which was picked up directly itself. So our work should be, our homework, our takeaways should be that when we study the topic Introduction to Anthropology, and subsequently we also talk about how anthropology can be divided broadly. So we have several discussions where we say it's divided into physical or biological, socio-cultural, linguistic and tribal. So we need to delve a bit deeper as to on what basis and on what type of sub-disciplines are these disciplines focusing in themselves. Okay, so from there only we would have been able to have a detailed approach to an answer asking us about the major sub-disciplines of linguistic anthropology in itself, right? This question, C part, a very often repeated question, and you must have all written so much about chromosomal aberrations in your test series as well. Now see, this question was a 15 marker, and what was peculiar about this question was they were not asking us to cite examples or describe certain diseases as a result of chromosomal aberrations, but look at the premise they have framed over here. Chromosomal aberrations can play havoc with the human body and mind. So what kind of psychological and physical effects do chromosomal aberrations or disorders bring to human beings? So this was the subject matter of the question. You already know about Down's syndrome, Klinefelter syndrome, Turner syndrome, Cry-Do-Chat syndrome. So depending upon how much time you have available at your disposal when you are writing such answers, you can supplement your answers with such examples, because the second part of the question is telling us give suitable examples. To answer that part of the question, which was asking us specifically about the psychological effects, you can talk about mental retardation, improper growth, okay, improper growth of organs as well as limbs also. Cranial or brain development is not up to mark. So you already know such type of ramifications, they always have applied variations when it comes to person. Okay, so think about a person who is suffering from a chromosomal disorder. The primary reason to feel a sense of disgust with themselves will be the very fact that such disorders are non-treatable. There is no rescue mechanism, there is nothing which can make them normal like a normal human being. So that basically is the first point itself, the very definition of a chromosomal disorder, which puts the life at risk. And we cannot even imagine the sense of mental weakness it can probably bring. You already know most of the symptoms which are attached to these chromosomal aberrations, they play havoc with the mind and body equally. Okay? So this was in a way attached with the genetics concept and asking you the applied ramifications those diseases might have on the human mind. Right? So you can see in all the questions, first point which I would bring to your analysis would be, they have divided the questions into two subparts, whereby you are seeing that every concept has been interlinked to another associated concepts, and you have been asked to write an answer in a cumulative fashion, right? So that is why I keep telling that we need to focus to cater to the demand of the question. Okay, so suddenly if we just look at the keywords chromosomal aberrations, we should not start writing the types of syndromes in an automatically programmed fashion. We have to first look as to what the question is asking you. It is asking you to give examples, but that is going to be the later part of your answer. The initial focus around which it should revolve is the physical and psychological effects of such disorders on human body and mind. Okay, I hope you are trying to find that thin line of demarcation as to how we should approach these questions, right? Because they are no longer just from static part, they have been elaborated more, they have been given a subjective frame of reference to analyze as to how we would approach the applied part as well, right? Okay, coming to question 5. Most of the questions over here, like human adolescent growth spurt, descent groups and modes of subsistence. These are some topics which we study as a part of our regular preparation strategy. Two concepts which I found that are of very interest creating as well as a bit intriguing for most people. Look at the C part. Is race a valid and biologically meaningful concept? So I don't know how many of you have seen articles related to this particular point of view. That is why I have taken snippets also over here. This particular concept has been in news, and we have had various studies which try to bring to the forefront the fact that race as a concept is something which is constructed socially. If you want to draw parallels, you can draw parallels with gender. Okay? So I hope you know the difference between sex and gender. Your sex is decided biologically, it is decided on the basis of the passage of chromosomes from your parents. Whereas gender is a societal construct, where you have different goods in the market which are labeled as for men and for women, whether it is a scooter or a scooty, okay, whether it is a body wash, it is a shampoo. So you can see there are proper demarcations as to this is the realm of men and this is the realm of women. That is why I think you must be aware of this particular concept, that gender is socially created, whereas sex is biologically created concept. I hope you appreciate this fact. Now, on similar lines, when we talk about race, no doubt we have studied the concept of race and the grounds on which racial segregation can be done. And moving further, we have also tried to delineate as to on the basis of what parameters, what facial features, what physical features, melanin concentration in your skin. We have divided people into certain broad types of the world. We all know, we have studied that detailed classification as well. But the question here is asking you something else. It is asking you whether it is a meaningful biological concept. There are n number of studies which focus on this particular fact, that race as a concept is again a social construct. Because if you try to delineate, you have studied the entire course of human evolution beginning right from apes, how we have progressed into Homo sapiens sapiens, the wise and the modern man. So we all have a similar limb structure, we have a similar design when it comes to your cranial capacity, the volume is same, functioning of the limbs is same, the biological vital functions are the same. Then how did that difference come about? In fact, it is very peculiar when we talk about Africa being a cradle of human civilization, because the most primitive sources of fossil evidences which we have found over there are from Africa predominantly. If you can remember Australopithecus gracile and robust form. So it was from there where we for the first time found some type of creatures which were not more like ape, but they were transitioning towards human-like features, right? So if we look at that point in view, we cumulatively say that these particular species migrated to other parts of the world. This is the point of view or the context which we float, right? Now think about this concept, race, division of people on the basis of color, on the basis of certain caste, class groups to which they belong to. And we already know the black-white rivalry is even in relevance today in the United States. And what to talk about India? We have so much social stratification. We are an epitome of social stratification. So if you try to bring into analysis such type of studies, and if you try to look at the wiring on the basis of which these concepts have been framed, you will find more of evidences which suggest to the fact that race as a concept is more of a societal construct than it being a biological construct. Okay, because once when it had been decided by the society to divide people on the basis of how they look, on the basis of which area they come from, on the basis of their skin color, then they achieved the next step of dividing people area wise, region wise, providing them subgroups as to from where they have derived the physical characteristics they have, which is a very superficial method of categorization. We are human beings, we are not any other species. When you talk about animals, you talk about lion, tiger, leopard, cheetah, you do not have racial classification there. And we all know that every tiger has a different stripped pattern. Okay, so why is it so much peculiar to human beings? Because they are the most intelligent creatures and they think they have done something very praiseworthy by dividing the entire world into these racial criteria. So this was the conceptual background of this particular question which was asked to us. You will find evidences that it is more of a societal construct. Okay, I hope you have understood the insights behind this question. You can always draw parallels with the concept of gender as well. Okay. So see, race and racial identity are social construct. This is an article. If you want, you can refer such articles on the web. You can take notes out of them. Okay. The other question, which was a bit peculiar, was the losses and gains of erect posture. We have a topic in paper 1 where we study comparative anatomy of man and apes. And in that particular topic, we specifically highlight those areas of Homo sapiens which are peculiarly very different from apes. The prominent examples which we highlight over there are the inward curve of the spinal cord towards the lumbar region. So, the lower back, the spine is curved. So, how do we draw it? So, I hope you all remember those concepts. Okay, so when we talk about erect posture, the first point which we bring about is inward curve of spine, and specifically if I talk about humans, it is in the lumbar region. So you all know what this means. Okay, so if we loosely try to differentiate, this is how it looks. Okay, we have a curved edge over there. Second part was about a bone called ischium, another one called sacrum, and another concept was about pelvis shape. So if you remember, these were all the factors which were responsible to promote bipedalism in an effortless manner in Homo sapiens. Why was the shape of pelvis changed? So that walking on two legs becomes easy for you, because one leg at a time is supporting your body weight, and that is why we do not hobble like a chimpanzee while walking. Okay, if you want to see the comparison, you can easily see videos on YouTube, on Google, as to how chimpanzees walk when they try to practice bipedalism. You will see they keep on balancing, they keep on swinging from one end to another end. But that is not the case with human beings. Why? Because our arms to legs length ratio has also changed significantly. The structure of pelvis has become basin shaped. Okay, the sacrum is not pointed, it enables us to sit effortlessly. So these were the changes which were responsible for broadly bringing bipedalism in an effortless way in Homo sapiens. But this question is asking you something else. It is not asking you the features. It is asking you, what are the losses and gains of erect posture? Gains anybody can write. What about losses? If you try to think, you will be able to easily highlight the fact chimpanzees and other apes do not have a very difficult time during childbirth because their pelvis is broader. And that is why childbirth as a process is very easy for them. Whereas what has happened in case of human beings, the pelvis has been constructed, it has been constricted, narrowed down to become in the shape of a basin, so which has narrowed down the space. And the human child is born with a significantly larger skull with respect to the body size, and since the pelvis has narrowed down, the process of childbirth has become difficult and more painful in case of human beings. So that is one loss of having erect posture. Another thing is back aches. When you are continuously sitting on a table chair or working continuously for 12 to 14 hours, your lower back starts aching, right? If you keep standing for longer durations as well, even then. So that is also because of this shape of the spine. Because when you are standing erect for longer durations, your spine is holding the entire weight of your body and it is putting efforts to keep you upright. So as a result of which, you can feel lower back ache. And it takes generally, if you see monkeys, apes and their children on one hand, and on the other hand if you look at a human child or an infant, you will see comparatively human infants take a longer time to learn how to walk. Okay, whereas this is not the case with other species, because those species are quadrupedal and therefore they have a sense of support of greater degree while they are trying to walk on four limbs. There is no need to maintain a significant degree of stability because the support is massive. But if you talk about human infants, they find a very hard time trying to balance themselves on two legs, and generally they roll down also. It takes a lot of practice for 1-year-olds to actually start walking. Okay, so these are some examples of laws or pains of erect posture. So though bipedalism has enabled us with other swift moving movements and we are able to sit properly for longer periods, but it has come with own set of disadvantages as well, which were not seen in case of apes and other related species, right? Okay. Question 6a, acclimatization and adaptive responses to high altitude cold climate. A very often repeated question, well prepared question. This is something we are very well prepared with. You can easily write an effortless description. This is just like a Homo erectus question. Okay, and it has repeated multiple times in the previous years as well. So I hope no one is going to have issues over here. The next question was, how the cases of disputed paternity are solved. Discuss the recent techniques. So see, the first part of the question is asking you, how are paternity disputes solved? The primary key to this particular question is that they are solved on the basis of the resemblances in DNA pattern which the child harbors, and correspondingly we have certain projected samples of those people who are claiming to be the parents of the child, and after doing the due process, whether it is a biochemical method or DNA fingerprinting or restriction fragment length polymorphism, any of the processes can be easily used to establish the original paternity test and decipher as to who were the parents of this child, right? If we talk about ancient methods, not ancient, you can say a bit older methods. So we have talked about a brief discussion, you might have studied in your classes as well. In biochemical methods, you study chromatography and gel electrophoresis. So gel electrophoresis is a potent method to observe the flow of DNA fragment, and on the basis of the length the particular fragment is carrying and on comparing it with the paternal samples, you can easily decipher. But see, that technique was not considered to be as much effective, and if you talk about the most recent one and which one is most commonly followed, it is obviously DNA fingerprinting. Okay, so the principle on which DNA fingerprinting works is cutting the DNA into certain fragments and then observing them by staining them with a particular dye and observing them in a spectrophotometer after carrying out gel electrophoresis as to what percentage of resemblances are being shown by the child's DNA with which of the sample parent's DNA. On the basis of this data, the paternity test can be established. We have seen this particular question being asked in different forms in the previous years. They have asked us about genetic polymorphism and they have directly also asked about DNA fingerprinting as well. Okay, so again this is also one of the expected lines question. Third part was Louis Morgan's classification of family, again a direct topic. Now see, question 7a, this is also one of the most peculiar question and a very important one of its kind. It is asking you to critically evaluate types of social stratification with suitable examples. We generally talk about social stratification and social mobility as a topic when we are studying society, right, as a part of your syllabus. So there we study what do we mean by social stratification, and we generally try to understand the overview as to on what basis certain societies across the world have been socially stratified, and India as an example comes forward obviously for obvious reasons. We have stratification on caste basis, class basis, okay, so multiple levels of stratification, and this is not something which is new when it comes to Indian scenario. You have already seen ever since you start talking about ancient periods, if you leave out the early Vedic times where there was a significant sense of equality, Just after that period, we had seen stratification embedded in the Indian societal fabric in a very strong sense. Talk about the Vedic period, the Varna system, so that was the whole origin of stratification, but which was cited to be a stratification on the basis of occupation. Eventually, women came to be socially stratified, they were given a different strata or a layer or a position in a society, and they were treated differently with respect to their male counterparts. And eventually, as we moved even further into rest of the time periods, you talk about Mauryas and you talk about Guptas, which are called as the golden age of ancient history. So there we see the social stratification being intensified to such an extent that you now have an announced category called Shudras and Chandals as well, where we see such evidences where they have to announce their arrival by beating the drums so that no upper caste person looks at them, because it was considered that even a look at that particular person would pollute, okay, the person of the upper caste. Okay. So such type of evidences, you already know the whole history when it comes to India. So that is why I said it is nothing new when it comes to India, because it has been embedded very deeply in our social fabric, and no doubt it exists today. So though some of the people might not believe in caste system right now, but we still have class system which is even overpowering the caste system in rightful scenario. Obviously not so in case of the interior parts of the country. If you talk about villages, caste system holds a strong dominant hold even today. It's considered to be a powerhouse. Now the point which I am trying to highlight over here is that when you are answering such type of questions where you are being asked about types of social stratification, there is no need for us to only stick on Indian examples of caste and class. You can refer to Weber's theory on social stratification, Marx's theory. Yes, you very well know he divided the classes, the people, into bourgeois and proletariat, how they were being treated, the exploitation of the masses. So you can bring those insights over here as well. There are another terms of stratification which were prevalent in the West, estate and slavery. So those people, those section of society who were considered to be a powerful landed class, they were cited as examples under the estate system. And they had a very well assigned slaves who had to work at their mercy. They were ill treated, okay, they were not given their wages on time, their passports were confiscated. So when you are looking at this particular question, try to look at it from a worldwide perspective. No doubt we have to discuss the caste system and class system over here. We can go a step forward and we can highlight that such types of stratifications are not unique to India. We have had stratifications in the European parts, in the Western world as well. Okay, so try to bring in that. You can give an introduction of social stratification concepts which were given by Weber and Karl Marx as well. Okay, so this was a good question, a new question for us. Next one was again from your static portion, determinants of fertility and fecundity, you might have written. Another interesting question, 7th question C part, was anthropometry. For those of you who must have began preparing with basic reference to class 11 SCRT or the Kerala SCRT book of anthropology. So there's a chapter where they talk about these terms. They talk about application based terminology associated with anthropology. There you will find terms like anthropometry, craniometry, dermatographics, okay, and serology, forensic anthropology. Now, if you deeply look at these terms, they potentially have a capability of appearing as a short note question any day in our exam. But what is more surprising here is that anthropometry has been asked as a 15 marker, and they are not just asking us to write about anthropometry, they are moving one step forward and they are asking us to focus on the nutritional status and sports capability of a person and the role anthropometry can play in analyzing these indices. So for people who haven't heard about the meaning anthropometry, if you try to break the term and try to decipher what is it trying to say. Anthropo would mean any study which is pertaining to humans, and metry has been derived from the term called metrics, which means measurements. So if I break down the term, the type of analysis which I am able to grasp from this term would be measurement of human beings. Not just that, anthropometry is the science where measurements of hominid fossils is done. What do I mean by measurements? Ever since you have studied human evolution progressively, right from apes till Homo sapiens, the most defining characteristic which we start our discussions from is about the cranial capacity. So have you observed, this is the most basic data which we are providing when we are introducing any type of a species. In terms of cubic centimeter, we write the data. So that is one example, measuring the cranial capacity or the capacity of the skull. Apart from that, there are various other measurements which are associated with anthropometry and which can be of significant help for us. For example, how can it be helpful in sports field? Using anthropometry, you can prepare ready-made ratios of the arm and leg length of the fossil species. Sorry. So as a result, what would you get to know? You will get to know the ratio. Using that ratio as a reference, you can create tools which are used in sports. Okay, talk about javelin, talk about shot put, the way it has to be held, the way it is to be thrown. They are generally apt according to the size of your hand and the pattern in which you are going to hold it, right? So anthropometry is helpful in studying the pattern of ancient human fossils, and it is helping us to design that type of particular tools which can have significant contribution in sports. Apart from that, apart from measuring the statistics in terms of lengths, you can also measure the body mass density, the body fat, which can tell you about the nutritional deficiencies which were carried by a particular hominid fossil. So it can tell you about the nutritional uptake as well. This is the application of anthropometry. I would advise you to have a look at that particular chapter from class 11 SCRT, and for that matter, whenever you come across such terms as a part of applied anthropology or any referential text which you are reading, you should make it a point to delve deeper on that particular topic, and you should try to have a short note ready. So potentially you should not black out when we are asked about such questions. Okay, so this was about anthropometry. So see, application in sports is in terms of height and weight, arm leg ratio, body circumference measurements like waist circumference, chest circumference. In case of nutritional aspects, it helps in measuring the body mass and body fat, which is an indicator of the nutritional condition. Again, a very direct question over here, tools of data collection, a whole entire topic from research methods in anthropology asked as it is. This is a very easy topic to write on. Physiological and evolutionary theories of aging, from your aging part, this must also have been done easily. And the structural analysis of kinship by Claude Lévi-Strauss. So you already know the structural school to which Lévi-Strauss belongs to, structuralism, what were his thoughts on that particular aspect. And he gave examples and named those systems differently, pertaining to different areas of the world. Kinship was accorded different names. So you had to elaborate all that 6 type of kinship derivatives which he had proposed over here. right? Okay, now let's talk about paper 2. Paper 2 question 1 was asking you about the relevance of Purushartha in today's scenario. So though we have had a previous year question, I think around in 2018, where they were asking you about the philosophy behind Purusharthas. So that was a static question, asking you that what are the grounds, what is the basis on which the philosophy of Purushartha is based, and what does it mean. Here they are going one more step ahead and they are intermingling it, interrelating it as to what relevance does Purushartha hold in today's scenario, in the present times. If you talk about the present times, do people believe in ethics? Do they believe in righteous path? It is an applied question, okay, which is asking you the relevance of living righteously today. Do you believe in morality? Since the whole world has been subjected to the point of belief system where everybody is trying to achieve their own ends and not bothering about the means. This is a very relevant question in that direction as to what path are we following, right? So this was a subjective aspect focusing on Purushartha and its relevance today. It is like your ethics question. Okay, how many of you believe in righteous living? How many of you believe in good karma? How many of you believe that irrespective of the results, you should work in a righteous manner? Okay, so that was the subject matter of this particular question. A very different question from the erstwhile patterns which we have seen in terms of paper 2. Tribe caste continuum, a very static concept. All must have written it easily. Harappan seals. Yes, the seal acting as trademarks of relationships with the Harappan civilization had with other major civilizations of the world. And the discovery of seals was on the basis of evidences found from those parts of the world, Mesopotamian civilization. So which is indicating that seal was used as a stamp to seal the consignment. That was the relevance of using a seal, to indicate that this consignment has been derived from this country and it is approaching the destination country, right? So you had to write about the types of seals. I hope you all have seen what type of images were visible on the seals and how many varied types were existing. It's a very common question, easy to write. Next one was caste and social capital. Again, this was a new concept and it was also carrying with itself a different point of view to look about when we talk about the caste system. So they are asking the interrelationship between the caste system and this social capital. Social capital means human beings as a resource. So we are social beings. In what way are we generating capital? So as we know, in caste system, because of the caste system, we have seen certain hierarchies and there are different strata of people who follow different types of occupations. So thereby there has been a stratification, but it is enabling social capital. How? With respect to certain businesses, certain professions which are followed by people by virtue of being a part of a certain strata in the milieu of the caste system. That is what this question is asking you, that how relevant is caste in the economic sphere. Okay, you can see jewelers, the erstwhile people who under the Varna system were knowing this art of jewelry are now jewelers and they make hefty amounts by charging fees and having their own cut, etc. So it is asking that how caste system is enabling social capital formation, how it is enabling certain professions, certain businesses to thrive and how it is helping them to add to the economy of India. Okay, so this is a new way to look at the caste system in economics. The next one is factionalism and politics in rural India. It is trying to interrelate rural India and the factions associated in terms of politics pertaining to the village folk. in this country. So recently also you are seeing all that campaigning which is going on for the UP elections is coming to the forefront. Just before the announcement of allocation of seats, you saw many people defecting the BJP and joining SP party, right? Now see, that was one-on-one person defection. In rural areas, depending upon the extent of followers of a particular leader, we see certain factions which are grouped. Faction is nothing but a group of people who have a significant moral sense of pressurizing the incumbent government. Okay, that is why you can see several factions, specifically when elections are coming up, you see several factions of people who are supporting different parties on different agendas. Okay, it is talking about that factionalism and how relevant it is in rural India. It is very relevant in rural India. In fact, rural India is the real phase of India's democratic elections. The urban people, those who work in metropolitan cities, they do not even have time to have discussions on politics and form factions for that matter. This is a very defining characteristic of rural areas. If you are following the elections, you might have seen on TV the anchors, they keep on interviewing certain groups of people, and when they visit a particular village or a particular area in a constituency, and you can there see groups of people are being seated in different areas and tendering their support to different parties together. It is talking about that factionalism and how relevant it is in rural India. Okay, again we had a new take over here. Question 2. Critically discuss the origin of Indus Valley civilization. The second part of the question is asking us to mention the evidences of its endogenous origin from pre-Harappan sites. Now see, this particular question, firstly it is very important since it is putting forth a new concept for us. Generally we do not prepare on these lines when we talk about Harappan civilization. Second fact which it brings to the forefront is that the focus of this question is on origin of Indus Valley civilization. You should begin your answer from there. That is the first part of your answer. Okay, when we talk about origin theories, there are certain theories of origin of Harappan civilization. First one is called the theory of Dravidian origin. Second, the theory of Aryan origin. And third, the theory of origin from the early or pre-Harappan sites, or it is also called as theory of gradual origin. Okay, so this is the example of endogenous origin if you ask me. So first theory is Dravidian origin theory, second is Aryan origin, and third is theory of gradual origin. This will focus on the endogenous origin theory. Now, the second part is what do these theories say and how are they different from each other? Since this question is divided into two parts. The first part is asking you critically discuss the origin of IVC. Critically discuss means we have to bring out the facts which at present are relevant when it comes from the point of view of theories of origin of Indus Valley civilization. We have to critically analyze them, how true they are they based on certain concrete archaeological evidences, what is the standpoint right now, how relevant it is today, what is the futuristic aspect. This is called critical evaluation in terms of any topic or question which you are answering, right? The second part is focusing exclusively on evidences of endogenous origin from the pre-Harappan sites. Therefore, it is focusing on this third theory. Understood how we have to approach the question? Now, you have to begin the question as to the concept that there are multiple theories which point out to the origins of Harappan civilization. The first one is called theory of Dravidian origin. It is based on the premise that there are certain similarities in the language script which is used by the Harappans, which was used by the Harappans, and of that which was used by the Dravidians. Though you all know that Harappan script as of now has not been deciphered, it is yet a process in work which is ongoing right now. But this degree of similarity in the script of Dravidian languages and Harappan languages, it has been found on the basis of usage of similar symbols. Okay. So therefore, there is a belief system that apart from the symbol usage which is common to these two civilizations, there is a cult of mother goddess, the fertility cult, and the worship of proto-Shiva in Harappan civilization, which you all know, it's a very well established fact. So these three evidences are considered to be the grounds to explain that Dravidian origin theory of Harappan civilization is correct. Okay, I will first tell you the belief system of every theory, and then I will tell you how wrong or right are they depending on the archaeological findings or evidences which we have at our disposal. Dravidian origin is clear. After that, the second one is the Aryan origin theory. As the name itself is saying, it is signifying that the Harappan civilization owes its origins to the Aryans. So this particular theory has been propounded on the basis of certain facts that in the Vedas there is a reference to the Sapta Sindhu region, which is exactly the region where we see mature development of Harappan civilization around the Sindhu river. And secondly, there are also references about the coming of Aryans into the country at that particular time. Okay. So this theory is tracing peculiarly, it is focusing on the fact sorry, that it was Aryans who were responsible for bringing in the Harappan civilization. The third theory, theory of gradual origin, focuses on the fact that there are certain pre-Harappan sites or early Harappan sites from Baluchistan, Kot Diji, Mehergarh, these particular areas. In terms of pottery, in terms of evidences of worship, in terms of metallurgy, copper smelting, bead making, there have been significant overlap which the pre-Harappan sites have with the mature Harappan sites, which is telling us that instead of calling these sites as pre-Harappan sites, we should label them as early Harappan sites, because these are the ones who are responsible for their progression into mature Harappan civilization as well. This is what we mean by theory of gradual evolution, and it is focusing on the concept of cultural convergence, that if you talk about culture, it is similar in the pre-Harappan sites and in the mature Harappan sites. If you talk about metallurgy, khetri mines, copper smelting is common in both the areas. If you talk about pottery, so certain pre-Harappan cultures which are often discussed are the Banas culture, Sothi culture in Rajasthan, and it has now been found on the basis of archaeological evidences that they have a significant sense of similarity with the mature Harappan culture. So is the overview clear? This is what all the three theories are propounding. Now coming to the critically analyzed part. On what grounds has the Dravidian theory being refuted? Archaeologists say that Dravidians had a rural setup, and similarly if you look at Harappan civilization on the context as to what type of setup was involved in the Harappan civilization, it was a urban civilization. Therefore the theory that they were same as Dravidians does not hold ground today. Okay. Now coming to the second theory, Aryan invasion theory. We know that what type of references have been brought, evidences of trade have been brought to signify this particular fact, and the references in Vedas are also there. This is what is the arguing premise as to Harappans have descended from Aryans. The recent genetic studies have found that there is no genetic relation, there is no DNA similarities in the Harappan fossils and in the people, Aryans who are descendants from the steppes. So I hope you know steppes as an area, it belongs to Russia. So this Aryan origin theory has been refuted on the basis of biological evidences. If you talk about this third theory, theory of gradual origin, it is focusing as to how mature Harappan sites might have evolved from the early Harappan sites because of the terms of similarity which have been found in both these areas. If you have to quote sites, you have to quote Mehergarh, Kot Diji, Banwali, Rakhigadi, okay, and Balakot, Sindh. You can name these sites where we have found evidences of both the pre-Harappan civilization and Harappan civilization, which is indicating over the fact that there is a degree of cultural convergence in both of these. And in fact, if we talk about the anthropological perspective from social and humanistic perspective, we can also draw similarities on this front because both these civilizations were urban, which indicates to a fact that there must have been a certain change in the political authority or a certain change and the economic organization which was responsible for bringing up the urban civilizational characteristics in this particular areas at that particular time. So therefore some archaeologists, they even say that we should name these pre-Harappan sites as early Harappan sites, okay, because they are showing a gradual evolution from one side to another phase of the Harappan civilization itself. The only evidence which is lacking from the pre-Harappan evidences of the sites is that they did not have elaborate fortified big cities, which you see is a characteristic in the mature Harappan civilization. Okay, so as you very well know, Harappan civilization, its origins, its script and its end, these topics are very contested. It is still a work in progress. That is why they have used the term critically analyze. So whatever you know about that particular civilization in that perspective, you have to describe. Okay, so Harappan civilization is still a work in progress because even now excavation works are going on and you cannot know, depending upon what fossil evidence is found in what particular timeline, the entire story can change. So that is why we are referring to these terms, that some archaeologists believe in this school of thought, some others believe in some other school of thought, depending upon the type of evidences they have garnered. Okay, so they are contested theories, but these are what we have. You can have your both similarities, differences and different points of view can be accommodated in this question. So this was the subject matter of this particular question related to the Harappan civilization. If you look at the B part, it is asking you about distribution and characters of Upper Paleolithic culture. So distribution is indicating to you that you should know the sites. You should draw a map if probable. As I told you, it will even suffice if you are able to draw a rough map diagram and enclosing it in a box. We are not looking for two scale diagrams over here. Okay, so this is how you have to break down the questions and then try to cater to every part that is being asked. This is an India specific question and more so from Upper Paleolithic. You have to discuss the culture, the tools which were used, okay, what type of cultural tool tradition they were following, okay, and the sites where evidences have been found. This is the subject matter of this particular question, fairly a static part. C part was asking us morphological features and phylogenetic position of Ramapithecus. Again, a static question. Next question. Impact of the concept of nature-man-spirit complex on sustainable use of natural resources. Can you look at the similarity over here? Again, we have a question which is closely related to environment and the way we use natural resources. As we were discussing deep ecology, we saw how different perspectives and points of view are existing. If we look at the present context, we see that we are increasingly using natural resources for our benefit, right? So this particular question is focusing on the tribal belief system of nature-man-spirit complex and how it can help in sustainable use of natural resources. You already know the essence of this topic. We have discussed when we were talking about ecocentrism, that the focus in man, spirit and tribal concept is going to be on nature and judicious use of natural resources. Therefore, again, it is refuting the idea of anthropocentric use of natural resources and environment altogether. Okay, so that is the subject realm. Here you have to be really creative to highlight that how tribal belief systems like this can help in sustainable living. And the primary standpoint which you can focus on over here is that, if you might have witnessed also, tribal systems and tribal way of life, they are sustainable, and secondly they are subsistent. They are not looking to make profits. They are based on day-to-day subsistence. They are based on survival, on living, and that is why their life patterns are sustainable, because they are using goods from the forest itself and they are giving it back to them itself, and they are not extracting it for profit and business purposes, which is exactly the opposite of the anthropocentric approach which is used by humans, right? Contributions of S.C. Roy in highlighting the role of customary laws in tribal life. Again, static question. If you look at the C part, critically assess the impact of Christianity on tribal culture. There is a topic which we have in paper 2, impact of Buddhism, Christianity, Muslims on both the majority Hindu population as well as on tribal aspects. So I hope you all had ready-made content on that particular topic. Only had to write the impact of Christianity on tribal culture and identity. What changes have been brought in culture and what changes have been brought in the identity process. Okay, again a question which you have prepared already according to my mind. Question 4, contributions of N.K. Bose in understanding tribal concepts. Again, see, this particular concept is also based on Indian thinker N.K. Bose, just as we had the question on S.C. Roy. So, pretty clear. Role of Panchayati Raj institutions in transforming the power hierarchy in rural India. When we look at the traditional pattern as to the basis on which the Panchayati Raj questions are asked, if you look at the previous year papers, on one hand you will see that the questions are based on the provisions which are mentioned in the constitution in relation to PRIs. Another aspect of question is that what degree of autonomy in terms of power, in terms of decision making, has the Panchayati Raj accorded to the rural areas. If you look at this question, this form of question, this is asking you how PRIs have transformed power hierarchy in rural India. So if you know the structure on the basis of which PRIs work, you will already know that specifically when it comes to tribal areas and for that matter rural areas, there are seats which are reserved for a sarpanch. Okay, there are seats which are reserved for the backward classes, for women, which is ensuring that the caste hierarchy, which is generally considered to be a defining norm for yielding power in the rural pockets of the country, should not act as a pediment when it comes to implementing the Panchayati Raj institution. So that is why what the government has done over here, by way of providing such reservation provisions in the seatings of the Panchayati Raj institution, we are providing those people who are generally deprived of any type of power holding agreement. We are giving them power. We are giving them the opportunity to take off the stage and to bring out the developmental projects which they need to take up in their village. So this is the significant degree of improvement if you talk about power hierarchy in rural India, because it is generally based firstly on caste system and secondly on the basis of the resourcefulness of the people. So whoever is a large zamindar, a big zamindar, is considered to be the person who holds or yields a lot of power within himself, right? So in that sense, Panchayati Raj institutions are acting as a mode of bringing those people to the power dynamics who have been subjugated for years together, right? You can focus on that particular part. To add value to your answer, you can mention the constitutional provisions under the 73rd Amendment Act, which are bringing these enabling provisions so as to bring the erstwhile exploited caste and people to leadership roles. Okay, this is going to be the highlight of your answer. You can provide clauses, okay, under this particular act which will be helpful for you. You can also mention PISA Act as an example, because it is empowering the tribal areas of the country also to come out and take decision for themselves, right? You can focus on that part. C part, the problems and challenges in education attainment of STs. This is a question which you might have written as a part of many test series also, a very common question as to what are the challenges specifically in providing education and healthcare. This is a very common topic and it's a very famous topic when we talk about the STs. What is stopping them from getting educated? What are the pediments? Okay, no mother tongue based books are available in the primary schools if we talk about tribal areas. So therefore, to bring sensitization towards education, we should begin with this common minimum requirement of acquainting people. So people over there, they are not willing to give up their own language and learn a language which is alien to them. That too in the primary classes till 5th standard. Okay, and this is more of a problem in tribal cultures, because what happens for the Indian government, there is not enough documentation on this particular front. We do not have textbooks pertaining to every tribal language. So therefore that is acting as a pediment in introducing mother tongue based education over there. So that can actually be a major milestone in bringing children to school. There are multiple associated factors, the condition of schools, teachers, okay, the will of the teachers to actually teach in such areas of the country, who is willing to go over there after being superiorly qualified. Are there any benefits, any entitlements for the tribal people and community themselves to come up with teachers or not? You can focus on multiple points over here, right? Question 5, urbanization and tribal institutions, the interrelationship between them. Since the trend which the world is following right now is progressively towards westernization, industrialization and urbanization, to what extent have they affected the tribal institutions? Have we been able to successfully mold the tribal institutions to become like us? You can quote different examples. In fact, when you will do a study on this topic, you will see there are some tribes in central India who have ultimately mingled with the mainstream population itself. That means they are open to work, they come to the cities and they are doing to and fro transport from their respective tribal areas to the nearest city or towns, okay, to amplify their income and to work. An excellent example is the Todas of Nilgiris. Their erstwhile dependence was on dairy farming, churning of milk and ghee. That was their mainstay, and in fact their food was also nothing but milk and rice or curd and rice. Over the time period, what has happened, the milking and churning has not remained that much of a remunerative in terms of occupation, and that is why they have accepted the present schema of things, and they are moving to the nearest towns to actually do certain jobs which can help them amplify their income, right? So that is one example. You can add certain more examples over here. Tribes of central India, so they have also mainstreamed with the mainland people, whereas there are certain tribes in Andaman and Nicobar Islands in northeastern India who are still sticking to their older social institutions. You can talk about the Ghotel system, the system of social youth dormitories, which is still a very prevalent norm in most of the tribal institutions. Okay, so all those institutions you can interlink. You can see what kind of differences have been brought as an influence of urbanization with reference to marriage as a social institution, with reference to kinship. There was a recent article, no, where Meghalaya has decided to change the matrilineal system of inheritance into patrilineal. Now, how is that change being brought about? What is the thought process behind this? Is there anything to do with the impact of urbanization over there? Are we moving towards more rigid patriarchy even in those limited societies who had matriarchy as a norm to live? There are multiple aspects you can cater to, right? Next question, ethnic media and social awareness. What role can ethnic media play in social awareness of the people? You must have seen, no? Now the channel has been discontinued, but on Raj Sabha TV we used to have a program called Main Bhi Bharat. So there, what do these people used to do? They used to reach out to the most tribal, most backward, primitive areas of the country, and they used to have a heart-to-heart conversation with them as to what problems they are facing, what scheme the government have brought, how they can be enrolled as a part of the umbrella scheme brought out by government for the benefit of the minorities specifically. So that is one example as to how media can play its role in social awareness. Ignoring the fact that, see, more often what we are seeing today is jingoism if it comes to media. We are not having ethical media, point number one. Number two, they are not so intended to create social awareness in the first place. It is a game of TRPs which everybody is trying to win or conquer. So therefore, ethnic media in this particular setup can come out and prove to be a worthy media partner. Because the rest of the country, the national media channels which we are seeing, they are not actually even inching a step forward towards bringing social awareness in the tribal cultures. So ethnic media can play this role. Ethnic media means which type of media? Belonging to a particular region, to a particular culture, to a particular ethnicity. And what happens when you try to convince a person belonging to your ethnicity about something, there are more chances of that person getting convinced, because you are coming from the same place, okay, you are coming from the same thought process and you have lived a similar life. So you can bring out certain highlights as to why a particular person should be open to accepting certain governmental policies or not. So ethnic media in itself can play a more convincing role to generate social awareness in terms of education, health, in terms of improving the nutritional parameters, getting vaccinated. Okay, a multitude of role can be played by ethnic media. This question has been rightly asked because the national media is literally has now become a serial, right? Next question is, cultural diversity And multiculturalism, a very important question. This is a very subjective question. I would like all of you to have your own take on this. What is your point of view? When you talk about India, you say unity in diversity, that we are a culturally diverse country and though we are united. If you talk about the United States, you take the example of melting pot, where you say that it absorbs people from all the cultures and it unifies them within its framework. This is the similar difference between cultural diversity and multiculturalism. Try to bring out your own thought processes on this. This is a very subjective question. Think on this, try to write it. Okay, a very important one. Next one is politics of recognition and deprivation. Right now, again, in the garb of election rallies and the dubious promises which are being made. So right now you might have seen the Yogi Adityanath government in UP, they have made promises of free ration. Okay, they are not talking anything in terms of job security or related aspects in terms of employment, but they are more focused on giving freebies in terms of ration. So what is that? Politics of deprivation and recognition. Who knows tomorrow the plan will be executed or not, but for time being, to get a particular recognition, to bring themselves to the forefront. So even though they might have been a very non-observant participant in terms of farmers' agitation, which were on for 1.5 years, but now they are vouching on a particular fact that they will enable distribution of free ration. Okay, so theoretically you will find both these premises are opposable to each other. But the whole point they are trying to make over here is that they are trying to bring themselves in the realm of recognition again, to bring themselves in the central schema of the state's politics. That is what they are playing, and then they will deprive the people of the similar commodities. You can find n number of examples. This is the story of every election in India, right? You will see paper 2 in most of the cases, no, you will see it is more of an application based paper like your GS papers, okay, rather than being fact based. Next question, impact of FRA on livelihood and culture. A repeated question. FRA has been appearing repeatedly for now, and when it comes to paper 2, we should be clear with Land Acquisition Acts, FRA, and also PISA. PRI, Panchayati Raj institutions, and Panchayati extension to schedule areas as well. These are certain thumb rule policies which we have to be thorough with. Okay, so this was from a fairly static part. Next one, factors responsible for malnutrition in tribal India and the interventions which are needed. Just now I was telling you about the discussion which we were having on ethnic media and the creation of social awareness. So what is lacking when it comes to the forefront point of malnutrition in tribal India? You will see what we are lacking over here is, first thing, social awareness. When you talk about edible vaccines, when you talk about injections, when you talk about maternal supplements like folic acid, tribal women and tribal people are very reticent when it comes to acceptance of such type of supplements in terms of vitamins or vaccines. The reason being, they have been hardlined to believe on their traditional customary practices which they have been following for years together. If you look at the tribes living in the Bastar region, there is a case study which says that these people, they are not even open to come to a hospital to get treated. They do not believe in that. They believe that if they come to the hospital, they'll probably a miscarriage would happen. So that is the degree of obstacle which is standing between the tribal people and the healthcare services over there. Same is the case with vaccination. So even though you might have the concept of fortified rice, oil, milk, what do you do to consume, get them consumed by the most malnourished population in the country, who are having a significantly higher indicators of child wasting and stunting? First and the foremost thing, social awareness. How to bring that? Use ethnic media, use NGOs, use volunteers, lead by example. You take the vaccine in front of them. Third, make the vaccines edible. If there is a mental block for people to take capsules and all, you can make edible vaccines as the norm for such areas in the country. What is an edible vaccine? For example, you insert the vaccine in a banana. You are making it edible. Through a banana, the vaccine is being served. Same is with rice. Golden rice can be is the fortified rice with provitamin A, which when consumed will begin the synthesis of vitamin A inside the body. So these are some methods and interventions which the government can make to make sure that in spite of a mental blockade which is existing in the tribal population against the consumption of nutritional and health supplements which are supplied by the government, we can focus on these aspects. Right? So there are a multitude of examples you can write over here. You can mention case studies of tribal people and how they would prefer what type of their own treatment methods rather than they visit a hospital. Okay, all that cumulative examples you can give. The factors influencing fertility in the Indian population. Right now, recently we have had many reports which are highlighting that the fertility rate in the country is going down, and mostly couples are choosing to go childless, and that is also one of the reasons as to how fertility has reduced. We have to focus on the greater part over here as to what are the reasons as to fertility being reduced. The very often quoted example is, first thing is that of lifestyle choices. So since people are now aiming for better career opportunities, they are going overseas, therefore their marriageable age is being extended. People are getting married late and eventually the rate of conception becomes low. Secondly, people are migrating to other countries, so therefore they are missing out on the indices over here. Third, people are willingly choosing to go childless. Some others are choosing to go for adoption techniques, right? So there are a multitude of reasons. Now there's a focus on self, which is more. People are trying to ensure their self-being, trying to ensure their good being, trying to ensure they trace their career paths in a way which hasn't been done by the older generations. There are a multitude of social and cultural factors which together are bringing you to a point as to why the fertility rates are coming down. Okay. Seventh question, impact of Land Acquisition Acts on tribal organization. Just now I was telling you, the basic thumb rules which we have to prepare for paper 2, FRA, land acquisition, PRI and PISA. Again, an expected question on the expected lines. Next one, problems involved in rehabilitation and resettlements of tribals displaced due to developmental projects in India. The oldest example which I can recall over here is of the Narmada Bachao Andolan, the late 1970s movement, and till now the people have not been resettled. What are the problems associated with it? Proper land acquisition hadn't been done in time. Resettlement policies, they had been figured out but without the tribal input. Why? Because see, when this entire area where you are living, where you have been living for your entire life, is going to be under a developmental project, and if you are asked overnight to shift from there, it is not just you who are shifting from there. Your livelihood, your neighborhood entirely is dependent on that area. Because when you are shifting from one place to another, you have to ensure a place to live. You should ensure employment. So it is not possible overnight. It takes time to do these things. That is the major roadblock which acts as a pediment in implementation of such projects, and majorly if we talk about the tribal settlement policies in place. Okay, because we have not worked out the plan, and even we have provided a bureaucratic made solution, it is made irrespective of the tribal belief system and cognizance. We are not consulting them in the first place, which should be the very first step. Okay, that is why there are a multitude of examples, specifically developmental projects. So though in the larger run, in the greater benefit scenario, we tend to think of developmental projects being of a great help for India as a growing country, but if we are not able to help the most lower sections of the society, the ones who are stranded, jobless, homeless because of such developmental project, it's not going to work in the long run. The government has to make alternate settlements, it has to make avenues for employment, if not anywhere else, in the place of developmental project as well. Okay, so I hope you have done this particular research. It's a very common question which we should be prepared with, right? Next one, interventions by NGOs to empower tribal women. This is also an answerable question, quite easy. 8th question, examine how structural transformation in economy is affecting the traditional social relationships in agrarian society. So if we talk about structural transformation in economy, how is the economy getting transformed now? We have seen transformation of economy ever since the setting up of tribal societies. From the primitive methods, we moved on gradually towards more commercialized farming techniques. We moved towards mixed cropping, right? We mixed towards diversifying poultry farming, fish farming. Therefore, these changes which have been occurring over the time period, if we talk about the present times, we talk about the genetic engineering revolution. Okay, the BT crops are the question over here now. So therefore, the agriculture setup has been changed significantly, right? And why it has changed? Because of the change in the structure of the economic model. Nowadays, you can see people shifting to organic farming who are making significant yields without using any type of pesticides or insecticides altogether. Though it takes a period of about 4 to 5 years to actually extract a profit out of organic farming, right? Similarly, on other levels, to what degree are GM crops being accepted in today's generation, right? So there are multiple parameters which are changing the agrarian structure, which is related to the change in the structure of the economy together, right? I have to talk about that relationship over here. Delineate the constitutional safeguards for religious minorities in India. A direct question where we had to write about constitutional provisions, might have answered easily. Identify the causes of tribal unrest with reference to Northeast India. So why do Northeast Indian people have tribal unrest problems with the rest of the country? How are the solutions approved by the government over there? Does there seem to be a logical intervention? Is there a framework which has been drawn with consulting all the parties concerned? Is there a common point or a common agenda which has been achieved as a result of such discussions or not? So here the focus was entirely on Northeast. If you can see over the course of time, we have had current affairs and news where we were focusing on northeastern part of the country. So therefore, this question was modeled in a way as to focus on the problems of tribal people in northeastern part of India. The takeaway from here is that we can make model answers ready on the basis of the tribal unrest in central India, southern India, eastern India or western India, so that whenever such type of a question is asked, we are in a position to answer it promptly, right? So I hope the discussion has helped you in some way or the other, at least in the way as to how you have to approach certain questions, whether it is a test series or your mains examination. I wish you all the very best in all your endeavors. Thank you.